Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Nerd Node. I kind of did a bit of a name change because Roundtable wasn't working since we're doing one podcast at a time now. Um, and I figured node information kind of all fits together in our nerdy universe. So today I do have another amazing podcast on here. Also, friends with Too Legit from the first episode. So we're all kind of tying together right now and having some fun with it. This is Laura and Steven. They do the Midday Musings. If you want to go ahead and give us a little intro from the two of you.
Totally. Hello. Hi, we're Laura and Steven, and we run Midday Musings. We like to call it the cure to the internet overwhelm. We talk about relationships, we talk about media, we talk about a lot of different things, typically through the lens of history, because we have a very knowledgeable resident historian here who always takes what we're talking about, common day, and ties it back into the past. That is not a consistent thing, but that does happen in a decent amount of episodes. We've been married for like 9, almost 10 years now. We have an acting theater background. And so we really bring a lot of that energy and a lot of that positivity into everything we do on our podcast. So that's a little bit about us. Laura, anything from you?
I think you've covered it. We're a cozy podcast that you can listen to 4 times a week, 20-minute episodes, just a dose of positivity for your day.
Yeah, cozy, funny, silly, 4 times a week. We release Tuesday through Friday. It's an aggressive release cadence, but we keep it short, 20-minute episodes, and we have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, I would definitely say you have fun with it because I was doing some heavy research today
Nice.
and listening to quite a few episodes just so I had an idea. And I love the format. I love just the way you two bounce off each other is really nice. Like it definitely flows, and I have to say the music ties it all together. I don't know where you got your music from, but that
Actually written by this guy.
Yeah.
oh wow.
Yeah, I just made it myself.
Yeah, that's very it's just impressive. Like when you can kind of do it all yourself, that's really cool.
Thanks,
Um
man. I appreciate that.
oh, that's no problem. I'm definitely jealous. I got to get into the music gig eventually. We got to figure out our tunes eventually for the main podcast that I do. Um but with that, so what was it that made you like decide to like really jump into this? Like what was the drive for this podcast?
This particular podcast was the answer to the question, what could we do easily and a lot? So I my background is I did a radio show when I was in college, and I've been in theater since I was quite small. So performance is a big part of my personality. And radio in particular, I really, really liked, just as a consumer of media, like all of those morning shows that you drive to work with, all of those late night shows that you listen to on your way back from work. I found them comforting and nice, and I wanted to make something that I would listen to.
Mhm.
And regarding the format, we just knew that we had each other here, and we had lunch breaks in the middle of our day.
Yep.
So we're like, if we put these two together, we could produce a lot of podcasts.
We're like, all right, we got 1 hour, right? 1 hour per day where we're just typically we kind of work from home, so we're fortunate in that way. And we're like, do we want to just record like 2 episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'll call it a day? And she's like, yes, let's do it. And that's what we do. Like we literally just, I get off work, I get off work for lunch. We go through a couple episodes on Tuesday, do some editing on Wednesday, and then we record 2 more on Thursday, and then we do editing and stuff the rest of the week. And then she does the marketing, the copy, all that on Monday. Then we go live the next week, and we just lather, rinse, repeat. But for me, from my side, I am also a bit of a creative. I've got a creative background. I really enjoy doing a lot of things: acting, creating music, singing. I've thought a lot about making a podcast for quite a while. One thing that I've also done is I've created merch, and I tried to sell it. It did okay, but I never had a thing that I could attach it to. So that's something we're thinking about for the future. Like I'm in the process of designing some merch for us too. And with all of the COVID-19 AV VC updates, we realized we could just connect with everyone all the time. And everyone kind of got used to the ubiquity of Zoom. It was everywhere, right? Like everyone was on Zoom, everyone was connected. And I said, dude, we could like do that podcast we've been talking about for years. And so eventually we just decided to do it. So here we are.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I love the idea, like the lunch idea, like doing it right then, like doing the 2 episodes. I mean, it's perfect. Like, it's great. It's a great way to like mix up your day so it just doesn't seem kind of, Because I know during lunch, usually I kind of waste my lunch, to be honest. Like, I run once in a while, but probably a better idea if I did some editing or something instead.
Yeah, it's the lunch hour. I feel like we've really optimized it at this point. Like we are using the heck out of lunch. Before I would kind of do what you would do, where I'd get on my phone, I would be on Instagram or something for an hour, and then before I know it, oh, I got to go back to work. But now it's like, all right, 12 o'clock, get to recording, and then it is a really nice break. It like breaks up the monotony of just doing work for 9 to 5. So it's fun, it's efficient, and honestly, it's topical because people are also, we assume people are listening to this on their lunch break, right? We're like,
Yeah.
you got 30 minutes, you want to listen to something that's fun. It's not overwhelming, it's not stressful. We do not do stressful content. We avoid politics, we avoid the news. We just talk about fun, silly stuff and like historical stuff.
Yeah.
So, who came up with the name Midday Musings?
That was the result of a significant amount of online research, just trying to find something that hadn't been taken that communicated a noon break or a lunch break or something. And there's like a lunch bunch and, midday blank and whatever. So eventually I was just like, okay, midday musings. There's nobody else.
Yeah.
This works.
Right.
Yeah, so comp analysis.
The slightly unfortunate thing is, even though we did a bunch of comp analysis, there's still like one other Midday Musings out there.
They have only like 6 episodes, and there's a midday matcha as well. So we're all just vying for that midday search autofill space.
But there weren't a lot of things. Number one, that do like a midday lunch break kind of style podcast, and there weren't a lot of other podcasts with the similar name. There's like one, but that I think is what inspired us to say, yes, Midday Musings makes sense. It's exactly what we want to do. We're not necessarily talking always specific facts. We're talking about our thoughts on things. And so that's exactly why we called it Musings at the end of the day.
Yeah. It was to communicate the content. And I think as someone, if you're starting a podcast, it's really important to do comp analysis.
Yeah.
Your title will probably have been taken because podcasts have been around for 15 years and there's only so many combinations of English words.
Yeah.
So do what you can to get to the top of that search.
Comp analysis, totally agree, Laura. That is an excellent point. One thing we did, and I have to admit, we didn't do this up front, right? We created a business plan for our podcast. We did not do this at the start. We did this after maybe 3 or 4, maybe 2 months in.
Yeah.
Created a business plan. But we figured out, what is our overview? What is our comp research? What is our comp analysis? What is our target audience? What is the team? We're like, well, you do this, I do this. Cool. That was pretty simple.
Yeah, it's a small team,
right?
But they're agile.
We figured out, what's our budget? What have we spent money on already? What do we need to spend money on? Can we avoid spending money until maybe we get some advertising dollars? Cool. Let's do that. What's our marketing plan? What's our monetization plan? And monetization we're still figuring that out, but we figured all of this out. And that's actually where we came up with this Midday Musings is the cure for internet overwhelm. It's cozy comfort listening. That came out of our business plan. Before that, we were kind of like racking our brains going, well, we talk about a lot. How do we describe this to people in like a elevator pitch? So that's how we got that. So I would say business plan, very, very important. Even if you started it, don't worry about it. Just go through those few things, and I think you'll really have a good experience, a more focused, productive experience in your podcast.
Shockingly, the business major is telling you to make a business plan.
I know. Yeah.
You are absolutely the first person I've heard mention that, but now that you say that, it makes sense. Well, I haven't talked, you're the second interview for the show, and I've talked to a few other people in regards to it, but I've never thought of the business plan towards the beginning, but it makes sense because it would alleviate a lot of fear, because you're actually putting out you're putting down a lot of the things going on, and you're rationalizing it, and you're seeing it, and it becomes a lot less overwhelming.
Oh, totally.
I know, when I started, that's all you think about is money, advertising, how are you going to do this, that, marketing. And if I actually would have wrote it down it probably would have made it less fearful to just get on the mic.
Yeah, the thing is, when you're doing anything new, especially something that has a lot of moving parts, like as you know, a podcast has a ton of moving parts. You don't know what you don't know. You
Mm.
don't know what you need. And you also don't, there's a lot of ambiguity around what you're even doing. And so just having something literally like this has a lot of detail, but I'll send you the link to it later. It's basically just like 8 different things, like what's our marketing, what's our monetization. It doesn't have to be like a crazy 10-page business plan. I'll even send you the template later on. It's very, very cozy, very creative, and just super simple for people to learn how to create a podcast before you start it or when you're early on.
Yeah.
I think it's very
Some
helpful.
high-level guidelines to
Yeah.
focus your action.
Yes, well said.
Wow, you two just bounce off each other so well.
It's a decade of being together.
Yeah. But I'll definitely, like, if you don't mind, I'm also going to share anything that you send too. I'll throw it at. It'll be on our YouTube. I'll put it at the bottom there. So some other people can get some ideas because I'm always seeing people ask questions about starting one, and I'm definitely going to recommend the business plan and actually do one myself. Finally, it's
Yes.
probably a good idea. Um, I was trying to see, and I didn't pay good enough attention, so this is a bad one on me. Have you done a logo, like a particular logo with yours yet? And how'd
Yes.
you go about it?
Okay, so there are a lot of free content creation softwares. The one that is used most is Canva. And so what we did is we took one of the templates on Canva and modified it. You can either do there are free assets on Canva and there are also pay for use assets on Canva. Obviously, the pay for use are a lot more sparkly and complex, but you can do it for nothing if that's what you want. And I highly recommend using some of these creation tools that have templates because it'll give you a faster to market experience, and it'll also it's a lot. It just looks a lot more professional when you work from a template than from when you work from chaos.
True.
The chaos of your own imagination.
So we do have that logo. Laura created it from Canva. I really like it. It's beautiful. It's very simple, very cozy. It's this kind of nice green hue with some hexagonal design in the background, and I feel like it really evokes the brand. Right? We are considering updating our logo a little bit, maybe updating some of our copy a little. Well, our image assets a little bit. Now that we're investigating AI tools, we're doing some research into that to maybe take that, auto generate some stuff off of it, and just make it really clean and crisp and just clear. So, yeah, that's what we're working on.
Yeah, and all of those recommendations are for small teams who have small budgets. Template-based content creation, fantastic. But if you are ethically opposed to using AI, you can also utilize Fiverr to get a low-cost asset for your logo. For your podcast episode covers, probably you want to use a template asset creator just because there are going to be so many of them. But take advantage of the low-cost creative resources, Canva being one, Fiverr being another. You can also explore your local social media for artists who are willing to take low-cost commissions.
Exactly. And on the note of low to no cost, if you don't mind using the AI side of things, Copilot is actually completely free, and you can use it to create images. It's Microsoft Copilot actually. Very good piece of software. You just download it onto your phone, log in, boom, you're good to go. Also, DaVinci is in theory free for make images, but you get like a limited amount of tokens, and I think once the tokens run out, you then have to pay something. But it does do amazing work. So if you have a little bit more of a budget and you want to throw some money at DaVinci, it's done. I've seen it do some realistic photos. When I told it, like, make an image of a duck, a cartoon duck, but make it look real, and it gave me a very realistic looking duck with like a cowboy hat on, and it had boots, and he had like a little cigar in his mouth. I'm like, that looks amazing. He looks like a character from Howard the Duck or something.
Cowboy duck.
Yeah, so there are multiple tiers of options if you are on a budget like we are, and we don't like to spend a lot of money. That's most of what we're doing, but there are options if you're like, dude, I got $50 a month. I want to invest into AI tools. I want to invest into getting someone to design my stuff. Also, Threads is a fantastic place to find people that will likely do work for you for relatively low cost, potentially free, just to get exposure. So I find a lot of people reaching out to me on Thread saying, "Hey, do you have any need for images to be created? I would love to help you." So tons of resources out there.
Oh, yeah, I've had people reach out to us also. The biggest thing I would recommend if someone does try to do that is make sure that I would list like the name with it all the time, just to give
Yeah.
them that extra exposure. Because I have noticed, um, if they're trying to get the exposure, that's kind of what they want in regards to their stuff.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, I've not messed with AI too much. I have a little bit. I'm not opposed to it. Um, I think it's just another tool that you can kind of use, um, and it's just out there. So I get some people, but yeah, AI is the new way to do it. So what the next like thing I wanted to get in touch with was just so like with equipment.
Hmm.
So I've been a proponent. I'm a big advocate for expensive, flashy microphone. The rest of it, you can make it work. Um, because I find the less audio stuff I have to do, kind of the better.
Hmm.
Only because we do an hour podcast, so you like listen all day. So like when I have to listen to that 3 or 4 times to make sure that it's right, that's like some
Ooh,
time. So
I
I
feel
like
them.
I like a good microphone. So what's your take on like equipment you started with and then kind of eventually moved to?
Okay, so equipment, right? So this is one of my favorite conversations around podcasts. So I'm actually a big proponent of start with what you got, go cheap-ish, and then add on where you need to add on. Because like for my equipment for my mic, I'm actually just using a five fine studio condenser mic. It has the boom. It's got the little spit shield so that I'm not blowing up my mic, causing little spit takes and whatnot. Very helpful, but I think it was like $70 to $80 on Amazon.com. Showed up in 3 days. We set it up. Very easy to set up. I'm a huge fan of it. So the pros, good quality, affordable, but the con is that this picks up everything, folks. If you're out there and you're starting a podcast and you have animals running around, you have babies crying in the background, this may not be the mic for you. If you don't have a place like a quiet space where you can just be alone with your thoughts and your words, that's the Five Fine may not be for you. I love it because I don't mind doing a little editing in post, but it does make a slightly more challenging post production edit process. For my headphones, I actually just use I say any type of noise canceling headphones. If you're doing editing, super duper critical because to me it doesn't matter what type of headphones you're using as long as they're noise canceling and as long as you edit with headphones. Because I'm just using like these Microsoft headphones that I bought on and I feel like a Microsoft sponsor right now. I'm not. I'm not in any way a sponsor of these specific Microsoft products. But yeah, I just got like some Microsoft noise canceling headphones, and they're really helpful for hearing every piece of noise that you won't catch if you just listen to and edit your podcast from your laptop. Like there's all kinds of hum and background noise that you'll catch with noise canceling headphones. So like super cheap noise canceling headphones. For recording software, I go again bottom of the barrel, very good quality though. Audacity. I love, love, love Audacity. It is free. It has lots of functions, and most everyone has at least seen Audacity at some point. If you've ever edited like a video, or not a video, if you've ever edited sound or a song in college or something at some point, you're probably familiar with it. So again, big fan of Audacity. It has more functions than you might imagine. The cons is it doesn't necessarily have advanced sound editing options. The plugins are good. Like it has a plugin to some more advanced um, audio smoothing equipment or audio smoothing software, audio repair software. But the plugins, they worked at first, and then for some reason I had a hard time getting them to continue to work. So I would have to like pop out of Audacity and go into the other one, and it was just a lot of pain. But I still use it. That's my go-to, honestly, for audio recording. Um, After I record, I actually do a bit of audio repair, and this is the pricey one, folks.
Yeah.
This one is not. If you are on a budget, if you are like podcast on a budget, this one is not for you. I love this piece of software. It's RX10 standard, very, very good software. It was recommended to us by a friend of ours who actually does professional voice acting.
Yeah.
He's on a tour right now doing some voice acting stuff. So awesome, wonderful. He recommended it to me. I got it immediately. It completely changed the game for me as far as being able to edit to like denoise things after the fact. So what it can do, first of all, it is $200 for the standard. That is quite a lot.
But don't worry, it gets more expensive.
Don't worry, it does. It does. At higher tiers, at $600, it can actually isolate noise. Like you can be in front of a stream outside and it will isolate your voice and completely remove the stream in the background. I've considered it. I'm not going to lie. Like it sounds like it's worth it for that alone. But no, RX10 standard is great because again, it does a lot of denoise for you. It has a repair assistant, which means you select your audio, you click a button, and you have it listen to it. It has some intelligent listening where it says, all right, based on this, I think you should make the following audio adjustments. And you click run, it runs, does all that for you. That part is great. However, two things about RX10 standard that are not ideal. The spectrogram view, the colored kind of view where you see all the bright red and blue waves. You feel like the Predator, which is kind of cool. You feel like you're seeing everything in like infrared vision, but it is kind of hard to pick up. It's kind of hard to figure out what you're doing if you're used to just sound waves, right? It's not as intuitive. And there's a bit of a learning curve. So it's very good, but it is not, if you don't have a lot of time to learn and you don't necessarily have the budget for it, I would say stick with just Audacity. Audacity does a pretty decent job on the low end side. And for our other equipment, I actually don't use mixers. You mentioned what mixers do you use? Literally, I just have like a USB hub where all of our stuff plugs into, and I have both of our mics plugged in. So I no mixing. So besides RX10, I'm kind of bargain software equipment for podcasting. So if it could be helpful for someone who's trying out there to just get started with very low investment.
Oh yeah, and I want to give a brief shout out to the Amazon lavalier mics that are like $20 online. If you really are looking to start a low cost podcast, our first 20 episodes were recorded on lavaliers and edited with Audacity. Nobody liked the audio, but they got it.
Yes.
It was produced. It was pushed to them.
And it got us started, right?
Yeah. It's so important just to start.
Yeah. Like, Eric, that's why I didn't send you some of our earlier episodes, because episodes 1 through 20, we have so much fun, but we sound terrible. Like, not bad, but like we sound well enough as long as we don't peak. The audio peaks a bit in those.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't think it was that bad. Like I noticed as your show went on, it did get better. Of course, I mean, I feel like your show should, like the audio should definitely improve as you go along. But I did notice a big difference. Maybe I didn't hear the peaks as much or pay as much attention to that particular point. But yeah, I didn't notice like the big gap. Like it is really good audio, I think, from day one. Yeah, you can tell that you put a lot of time into it. And yeah, I'm a big Audacity guy. There's so many how-to videos on YouTube for it. Like, if I can figure it out, I promise you anybody can. All I do is play video games. So computer programming things has always been difficult. So, but yeah, definitely Audacity. I'm going to check out that RX10 though. I know it's a little bit of an investment. But I do think as your show goes, you should always look at investing in yourself and realizing you can kind of achieve things, kind of like that dream thing that everybody always pushes. Yeah. And I don't have to edit, so I get my time back a little bit. I don't have to edit as much if it's going to do some of it for me.
Right.
So, yeah, time is a valuable thing, I think.
Very.
Yeah, the super clean audio you're hearing would not be possible without the RX10 standard. That is the thing that, like, so we record next to a fridge. There's a fridge that is literally next to us humming 24/7. And because of that, it just takes out the background denoise part of it. And I feel that was a little harsh on the lavaliers. They are very good. If you got $20 and you want to start a podcast and you want to like walk around and record and upload it directly very easily, lavaliers are the way to go, man. Like that can get you into the podcast space. You won't even notice the sound quality at first, and like it's good enough. So lavaliers are a good gateway into podcasts.
Yeah. Someone I know whose podcast is in the top 20 in India.
What?
I know, right? She records exclusively on lavaliers.
Nice.
But I guess the content is just that compelling.
I mean, sometimes it can be the content, I would imagine, and the sound doesn't have to be. I'm such a sound person personally, so that's why I'm so big on it, because no matter how good the content is, if I can't listen, I just can't do it. So,
Totally.
But yeah, I'll have to check out these lavaliers. I'm curious as to how it'll go, because I want to get like a travel mic at some point, because unfortunately I do travel a little bit, and I need to not make excuses to not podcast while traveling. So if I have a mic to take with me, I'll probably have to do it. So you've already talked a little bit about like how you plan your episode. Like you have this plan, like you do 2 on one day, and then you do 2 on another day, and things like that. But how do you like pick the topics in particular? Like, do you plan it ahead of time? Is it a jump into it, or what's your setup for kind of your episode picking?
So we do a little bit of experimentation in this area. A lot of our episodes that are that cover a lot of topics, those are the result of us just sitting down and saying we'll find it. But in other cases, we will specifically find a movie that we want to watch it with the intention of discussing it. We do a lot of indie film content that is pretty successful, and so we have some formats that are predetermined. So we'll be like, okay, we're gonna talk about The Promised Land, a Danish film that we saw, or we're going to talk about Perfect Days, another recent indie film. We also do another format where we'll take card games and use them as prompts for our discussions. Mm-hmm. So we have a couple of relationship card games, and we'll set out cards and discuss those cards, and that gives a shape to the episode that otherwise might not exist.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And those relationship card games can be very helpful because we do talk about relationships otherwise. So it's very on topic, and it's just like our interpretation of what the cards mean. We do like a red flags card game that brought to you by Grim Rabbit. We're not sponsored, but we do like them a lot.
You could sponsor us.
Good. If you're there, you're listening. We're here. Where we like look at these red flags and these white flags. The white flags are like positive attributes of a person that you might want to date. Red flags, everyone knows, terrible attributes of a person you might want to date. And we look at them and we go, Laura, is this actually a red flag for you? And she goes, maybe it's not. Maybe this is actually a white flag. Maybe this is a pro. And so you get to learn something interesting about the other person, and also get to like explore that with an audience, and it's fun.
No, that does sound really cool, like to do card games like that. And I think those have also picked up like out in society a lot, especially with COVID. You got a lot of different ones. Like I go to Walmart now and I see all kinds of different card games out there now that people are playing, where they ask each other questions and learning about each other, and icebreakers and different things. So that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Anything that you can do to I guess augment what you already have, like what you already discuss. Like obviously we talk about relationships a lot because we're in one, and so it's an area of expertise. And media too, that's the same thing. So finding something to watch, good guidelines, whatever your niche is, you can do improvisation, but also just find a skeleton to hang that content on.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Laura.
Love a skeleton.
Yeah, I do too. Halloween, one of my favorite holidays. I love me some skeletons. But no, seriously, that is really good advice. Like whatever your topic is, like sometimes we talk about history. It might be worthwhile to like get a history card game or history board game and like play around with it, especially if we went to like a video format like you do. I think that could be really helpful and really impactful. You know, I actually really enjoy the TTRPG podcast where people will just play a game live. They're playing D&D live and everyone's getting into it and everyone's got characters. Sometimes there's puppets involved.
It's true.
It's just a lot of fun.
I've never think of doing puppets. That might be something interesting to look at.
I want to just shout out to a place called Perception Studio. It is populated by like Disneyland level entertainers and puppeteers.
Yeah.
And they do tabletop RPGs all the time. It is silly. It is delightful. It is streaming on Twitch on a regular basis.
Perception Studios. Shout out
Perception
to
Studios.
them. They are great.
Yeah.
And yeah, they usually have at least 1 to 2 people who are playing the game who are actually puppets. So like the person who is puppeteering the puppet is like under the table, but playing D&D as the puppet. It's wild and hilarious.
Oh wow, that's something hot to look at. Yeah, that's a big thing, is finding your niche within podcasts. I will say, you
Right?
got to find it and you got to go with it. And if you can find something that no one else is doing, because that's got to be. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely check it out. I'm super curious now. I don't want to like deviate and ask a bunch of questions about another show. Be weird. All right, so the big thing with episodes, why just, I know it's the 20-25 minute thing, but have you ever considered doing anything longer? Have you looked at it, or is you just, it's just the 20-25 minute is just the perfect thing for you?
We actually started by doing longer episodes. Some of our early episodes are like 45 minutes long. But going through research and then looking at our own resources, research tells us that the optimal podcast time is 10 to 20 minutes, according to Spotify for podcast data. And Steven's sanity is also valuable, so the amount of editing time could be reduced, and that would have made our podcast more enjoyable for listeners and creators. So that's how we ultimately got to like the 20-minute space. It evolved from a longer form podcast.
Yeah, we were going long. We were going long on some of those early ones.
He was editing for like 4 hours.
I was so sad, especially because we were still releasing these 40 to 50-minute episodes 4 times a week. I was like, I have no life on the weekend. I am just sad. But we produced some really fun content. So I'm glad we scaled back a bit.
Yeah.
If I was able to optimize my my editing, I would totally be down to go to some longer form podcasts. But again, because of the research determined, 10 to 20 minutes is optimal for the listener, and it's enough where I can still go out and do stuff on the weekends and not be beholden to that. Because like a lot of you out there thinking about starting podcasts, I don't have a whole team, right? Like you have to go with what you got.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you mentioned like possible like video at some point. That's a whole nother bag of fun right there.
Yeah, that's the way to put it. That's the way to put it.
That is the word.
Yeah,
Even just getting set up for this video podcast with you, I was like, Eric, I'm so sorry. We're going to be late. Technical difficulties.
yeah, things happen, especially with like the video aspect to it. You definitely want to be a little tech savvy with it. Like the issue we had in the beginning. The only thing I knew was Discord sometimes interacts poorly with this, so close it and reopen. After that, I'm like, I'm so confused.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah.
Turn it off and turn it on again. That's like the IT department's go-to. If that doesn't work, we'll fix it. But usually you can self-fix, so it worked just fine.
Also, in regards to your episodes and like picking different titles and things like that, have you ever done anything with like fans picking or fans like throwing out ideas or anything like that?
That is an opportunity area for us. We used to do a lot of fan interaction in the early episodes, but after a certain point, we had banked content for a month before we launched, and then as we
Smart.
got closer, right? They actually say that what you want to do when you open your podcast is drop 4 episodes on the first day, which we didn't do. We didn't know this yet, but for you guys, if you're starting, bank some content and then drop a lot of it on one day, since it's beneficial for the search algorithm. Anyway, so when things started catching up with us, it became a question of what could we lose, and fan interaction has suffered as a result. How do you do it? Like, from what you've said, it seems like you guys interact with fans a great deal. What's the system you use?
So honestly, I try to. It's gotten better with threads, because I've asked fans for like feedback or different things, and it's just, I know people have busy lives and stuff like that, so sometimes it can be hard to get some interaction back. Our Facebook group does a little bit too, but we've just thrown stuff out there like randomly. I'll put like a poll out, like something we can talk about. And I'm also doing the spaghetti technique, throw it against a wall and see what sticks. So like we've
Beautiful.
opened packs of cards. We've tried different things. But with fans, yeah, it's just as we're growing, it's getting a lot better. I
Mhm.
can't expect people to always give time or feedback, but it's gotten better. Just polls is the only thing that I've done that really has shown anything back
Mhm.
for episode stuff. Just what do they want to see?
I have done some of that research on Threads too. Again, the poll's super helpful because we're a bit of a generalist podcast, right? We talk about a few main types of topics, but we also will just talk about literally anything that's on our mind. Like we've talked about tech, we've talked about goats, we've talked about Uber for horses, like an app that allows you to summon a horse that you can then jump on and ride out into the sunset. It's just some silly idea that we just had. So we talk about all kinds of random stuff too. And we've thought about specializing. And part of our quest to determine if that would make sense involved a poll to our users of like, hey, Threads, would you be interested in like a longer form, like episode? Would you be interested in a podcast about rewatching a certain type of show, episode by episode? Would you be interested in this kind of thing? And so, yeah, like yourself, I find Threads very helpful for getting some user feedback. I use it more for podcasting feedback, but I could use more of it for like user feedback. Like, what did you think about this
Mm.
episode? Would you like more of this? We do ask our users in the episode itself, but I think there could definitely be some follow up. And this, I see a lot of people doing this where they'll say, we talked about this. Let's drop a poll in Instagram. Let's drop a poll in Threads where it specifically asks the user, what did you like about this? Do you want more? Did you hate this? Wasn't that silly when Laura was talking about that ghost that was on fire or some random topic we got into? Um, so I think there's an opportunity there. And if you're starting out new, that could be a really good way to build your brand because people, the fans, they want to connect with you. They want to talk to you. If they like what you're putting out, they want to have a personal connection with you often. So, yeah.
Yeah, and actually Spotify for Podcasts will auto-generate a couple of questions with your episode, and we're lucky enough to have a couple of super fans who engage pretty regularly. And so their engagement heavily biases the feedback. They've got a great
Yeah.
deal of say relative to our larger audience.
It's true.
If you guys want to be heard,
Yeah.
little Spotify responses.
And I ask people in my running group too. Like I'll be like, hey, I'm doing a podcast. Anything you'd be interested in hearing about? We talk about this kind of stuff, and they'll be like, not sure. So what I do is that I ask them, if you were to do a podcast on something, what would you do a podcast on? And then that tells me, number one, what they know a lot about. Number two, what they're very interested in. And if I know a lot about that too, I could do a podcast episode on it or collaborate with them, invite them into it. So I'm actually doing when my knee was in a bit of a better place, it's a little bit recovering from an injury, unfortunately, right? But I would go into my running group and just ask them, like, y'all, I'm doing a podcast. Like, what would you do if you were podcasting? And I got some pretty good feedback, honestly.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
Yeah.
I do want to start incorporating my outside life with my podcast a little more than I do. I think that's a great way. One thing I'll say to people though is in the beginning, and it's nothing against fans in any way, shape, or form. You don't always get the interaction you want right away, so don't let that bother you in the beginning. That bothered me a lot for like the first 4 months. Um, was the fact that it would be difficult to get large numbers of polls and things like that going. Don't let it bother you when you start your podcast. Just realize that they're interacting. Each person probably interacting with hundreds of different things.
Oh, yeah.
Might not have seen your stuff or something like that. It's not necessarily a proponent of you. So with the fan stuff, yeah, it's definitely it's an uphill battle to get large
Yeah.
interaction.
Eric, that's a really good point. I mean, the truth is, one like or no likes and like one answer to a poll does not mean you have 0 to 1 people listening to your stuff. They could have seen it, clicked on it, liked it, loved it, but just didn't have time to comment or like. I mean, think about the stuff that you're looking at on the daily that you thought was hilarious. How many of those things did you actually comment on or like or answer their poll? Maybe you loved it, but you're like, I got stuff to do. I got to go take care of my cats. I don't have time to respond. So people, even if they're not responding right away, they do over time more, and that doesn't mean your stuff isn't getting listened to. Like I've done some posts on Threads about our episodes and gotten like 2 likes, but then it has like right after I posted, it gets like 8 to like 10 additional views. I'm like, oh, okay. So people are lurking. People lurk a lot on the internet, and that's worth calling out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's nice when you get those extra bumps and listens, even if you're not getting the interaction you really want.
Yeah.
So with your release, I'm gonna guess that you do through Anchor, what was originally Anchor and is now Spotify
Yeah.
for your podcast. So what made you pick that particular one?
Actually, you picked that one, Laura. You want to speak to that?
Yes. So it was actually learning that Spotify for Podcast existed that allowed us to like wrap our brains around how we would publish. We were already Spotify users. It had a clean UI. So easy user interface cannot be underappreciated.
Mhm.
It's so good. And because it was new, I thought that there might be a benefit to be an early adopter. So we started releasing, I think, less than a year after they launched, and we've gotten some good impressions as a result of that. The benefits are that they post to everywhere, like every single podcasting platform. So that's good. It makes sure whatever you use is able to push to all of the podcast platforms. And I liked how they auto generated user interaction, and how you could record inside of Spotify. That was actually initially how we were recording. We were just using the native recording app. So it was simple, it was easy, it was free.
Yeah.
And it posted everywhere.
Yeah. So yeah, that was November 2023. We did our first episode in like October, all through Anchor, formerly Anchor, now Spotify for podcasting, with the lavalier mics, and it was super duper simple. We just put on the lavalier mics, test their audio, press play on Spotify, and then it would literally just produce the audio within Spotify. Granted, by the time we actually got to the editing part, I definitely had to like pull it out, clean it up a little bit, but you could literally just post the audio directly to Spotify. Like they have some this may be changing, so if it is, feel free to cut it later. But you can add audio directly from the Spotify for Podcasters app, like to your intro, to your outro. My understanding is it does limit where you can post. Like if you add a Spotify audio clip that's within Spotify for Podcasters, you can only post in Spotify because there's like some copyright related infringements if you post elsewhere. So it means that you're only posting to Spotify. But if you don't have the time or energy or aptitude to create a song and you really want some audio, some tie-ins, you could just post to Spotify for Podcasters using that audio all within the same interface if you don't really need to or want to do much of the editing. So I think it's a really good, simple simple piece of software, simple format. Like it's all in one in a lot of ways. So yeah, I'm a big fan of it, honestly. And worth noting for those of y'all starting out, it doesn't automatically post to all of the places, but when you link your RSS feed to those other places like Apple Podcasts, Radio Public, iHeartRadio, it will automatically push it to those when you create new episodes. So you still have to go into each of those particular places you want to cross post. Totally worth it, by the way, and like make sure that you have an account created there and like connect the RSS feed, which is like your podcast link, basically, to those sites. But once you do that, it's a little setup. But once you do that, you are posting everywhere you want to with like one touch of a button. So yeah, big fan of it.
Oh yeah.
And they make it super easy because I actually use the same thing.
Nice.
So like right through the page, you just click like Apple Podcast, and it'll take you there. And you set it up, and then you go back and you hit the next one. And it always lets you know if something drops off too. Because I had an issue, I don't remember what it was, and I dropped off. I had to reset it back up. So yeah, I agree. Like it's a super program.
Yeah,
especially for the fact it doesn't cost anything and it's just so easy to do. And their analytics, I think, is really good.
Yes.
That's a big thing for me, and how I have been trying to pick episodes or trying to like think of ways to pick episodes. is because I will see where people stop listening and like the percentage and like how it carries and things like that. So that's part of how I kind of thinking in regards to episodes. Like we get better feedback with tabletop than we do with video games and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a good one though for sure.
Yeah, the analytics there are fire. I can't believe I didn't mention that. Like that.
Yeah, that's like their major selling point, and they do have a native monetization system too. So you have to have 100 distinct listeners over 60 days, I think, and then it unlocks monetization, which will give you either the option to have sponsor content, subscriber content, so people can opt into additional content that you make, pay you a monthly fee, and bickety bam, you're monetized.
Yeah.
They can also sponsor you, just give you money. There's that option as well. You can't do both. You have to choose.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't want to set up a Patreon, then maybe sponsorship works for you. It's just so integrated, so well integrated.
Yeah, they're smart. They did a lot of things right. I unfortunately can only do, I think it's a subscription base because even though the 3 other people in my podcast are in America, I'm in Canada now. So there's different laws with things. But no, I love you, Canada. But yeah, it's just different things. I've noticed it with a couple different programs, like because of where I'm at, it's not the States. I can't monetize the same way. I'm working on that. I'm working a workaround on that that's legal. I'm trying to think. We've covered so much. All right, I got a good one. What's one thing that you think that you really did, like one particular thing that really kind of got you some traction with people? Like, what's one particular, like a certain episode, or was it like, I don't know, was it just a certain point or a certain maybe a post you made that really kicked off, or what's one thing you think that really got you that first like bit of traction?
Okay, so I think there are probably 2 answers to this. The first is that Steven started heavily networking through threads, so we were getting more eyes on the podcast. So like, utilize your network, utilize your creative community. People have stuff, and if you're willing to share your stuff and comment on their stuff, there's a synergistic relationship that can be built there, and you'll get a lot of eyes, and those eyes might lead to more eyes. But also, our most popular podcast that we've ever produced was on the Kardashians.
Yeah.
And that's just topic recognizability. Everywhere in marketing, they tell you that there is a recency bias in your consumer base. So your listeners are looking for something popular or that has happened recently. And if you make content on that, you will ride the wave of virality. With the Kardashians, it's just such a recognizable name that we were showing up in searches. And if you have a famous person who is the topic or related to your topic, if you put it in the title, it tends to perform very well. So networking and topic selection play an outsized role in your listenership.
And I'd be happy to go into the specifics of like, how do you social media network? How do you do that without coming off like you're desperate for attention? And it can get awkward if you don't frame it the right way, or you might feel awkward doing it if you're not in the right mindset. So it's a process though.
Own the thirst though.
Yeah.
Own it.
That sounds like an advertisement for Gatorade or something. Own the thirst.
You're thirsty. You want people to drink your content. That's fine.
Thirst.
Yes.
Thirst quench.
Some people want it. Your audience is thirsty too.
It's hard to like find that boundary because you feel like, I know personally, I always feel like if I just keep posting more, maybe more people will listen. But realistically, that's not how it works. It's more quality than quantity with the social media stuff. And yeah, definitely, I'm slowly learning myself, like only a little bit here and there. I don't want overhydration.
I found that with threads, there are a couple key things. frequency of posting, like post if you have time to post 3 or 4 times a day, do it. Like just do it in the morning. Just ask questions. Ask people questions in your niche. That's something that I found was very helpful. And make sure you use hashtags. Fortunately, in Threads, you can only use one. Don't use a bunch. Use one, like 1 or 2 hashtags max, and call out, like, as an example, I'll go on, hey, podcast threads. That's a hashtag. And then I'll say, what was a time, like longtime podcasters, what was a time that you had like a really big challenge in your podcasting experience, and how did you overcome it? Or what are things you wish you knew when you started 6 months ago? Or, hey, podcast threads, post what you're releasing this week. Like everyone post here and I'll follow you back. And I find that like giving more than you asked for drives people to your content, drives people to your page. And then once you have a post that you put out, you can respond in the comments with like your stuff. So like once they're drawn, they can be like, oh, by the way, follow our podcast now that you're already here. So like the hook is you give them something first, and then you ask for a little something in return. Give more than you get, basically, and you'll do well.
Yeah, I definitely never would have considered the commenting inside of my thread to kind of generate some extra love. That's a good one. All right, so we're getting kind of towards the end.
Okay.
So, just from each of you, what is one particular thing, like one thing you wish you knew in the very beginning that you could go back and kind of do different from like day one? What is the one thing?
I would have banked so much more content. I would have banked 2 months in advance, because that schedule will come at you so hard and so fast. And also, I would have dropped 4 podcasts on my first day of publishing.
Yeah.
That's what you should do. Prepare to win.
Exactly. Okay, so from my side, I think I would have learned to edit before I started releasing podcasts. So again, just preparation, right? Like learn to edit, just play around with it, play around with the episodes before you commit to a release date. Because at a certain point I was learning Audacity. I had learned that. Then I was learning RX 10 standard, or RX standard 10. Yes, RX 10 standard. And I was switching back and forth between Audacity and RX 10 standard. And then the file churn was crazy. So learn to edit a little bit before you go in. I wish I would have done that. And also just a document of all the stuff you think you need to do. What is a podcast? What do you need for a podcast? Look it up. You'll find it online. And ask yourself, do I have the time for this? If not, what do I need to take off my plate so I will have the time for this? Because it is time consuming, but it's incredibly rewarding, folks. Like I'm a big fan. I love doing it. I love talking with Laura about random stuff, about history, about media, about relationships. It's fun, and you get a chance to connect to your local community, adding value to your local community. So big fan of it.
All right, well, that was pretty awesome. I've had a great time. I've actually learned quite a bit. Not gonna lie. The business plan is my absolute number one thing. I actually will be working on that tonight.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think for me to grow and continue to go forward, it's something I have to figure out. There's a lot of valid points with that, but I hope everybody got something out of this. I feel like you will. There's no way you can't pull a little bit. And I'm going to continue to do these. So if any podcasters listening, and you want to come on and you want to do kind of a similar thing and just tell your story, give some ideas, or if you got some different outlooks, things like that, I'm super happy to get you on here. But yeah, so make sure that you're checking out Midday Musings. Release schedule one more time for me, if you can.
So you'll find us on Instagram at Midday Musings Pod. We release Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, every single week, except for next week. But almost every single week. We had some cat medical stuff we had to take care of.
Yeah, so, family emergency.
Yeah, family emergency.
We'll get 2 episodes.
Yeah. So 4 times a week, Tuesday through Friday, Midday Musings Pod on Instagram. Or I'll find you, Steven does stuff on Threads. Promise you, if you have commented or posted on anything about podcasts on Threads, I probably found you already.
He's looking for you right now.
I am. And by the way, Eric, folks, if anyone has any questions about business plans, podcast business plans, about editing, about content, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk about it. I love doing this stuff, and I love helping people figure out what I figured out how to do, so you don't have to worry about as much of the struggles like we did going into it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm going to post, like I said, things on the YouTube. So when this episode comes out, go into the comments. You'll see stuff from Steven. So that way, if you do want to reach out, we'll throw his links in there for his threads. So you can reach out to him about anything that you have questions about. I'll also put his business plan that I'm going to use and anything else that they send my way. So we're going to grow this community one way or another.
Love it.
If we have to drag you, we will. So that's pretty much how this is going to work. Yeah, you might as well. I mean, it's a great adventure.
Yeah.
So this episode will probably come out, I'm going to think, like maybe next week, Monday. These are like different episodes with me, folks. So I kind of just squeeze them in when I can to edit and get them out there. But I will publicize a lot before each one comes out, so that way everybody knows when it can or when they can catch it. And it will be on the YouTube.
Excellent.
YouTube.
The YouTube.
Yes. I emphasize it so it sounds flashy. All right, everybody. Have a great day. And thanks again, Stephen and Laura. I really appreciate it.
An absolute pleasure. Thank you, Eric.
Great chat with you, Eric. Talk soon.